EJ,
Hey, Nate.
glad to have you back, bro.
It's good to be back. It's been long overdue.
Your story. I love sharing your story as it evolves as an entrepreneur, as a human being, because you're the real time version of so much of what I discuss on the show, and leadership, business, family, life, the challenges we face, how we interpret them, how we evolve and adapt through them. It's easy to talk about it theoretically. It's easy to talk for me to talk about, oh yeah, 20 years ago, I was on the verge of bankruptcy. But like in real time, somebody like you,
What's it like to interview someone on the verge of bankruptcy?
and someone listening inevitably is like, man, I'm there right now, or I'm where you were 3 months ago.
That's right.
And how it help me to understand and to really make sense of this journey. So, and I appreciate your willingness to be transparent, to be vulnerable, and to share. Man, you know what? This journey, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Far from it. But it's the story, and you're a storyteller. You've been a storyteller, and you know that, man, as much as it might hurt, great stories have conflict.
Yep.
All kinds of challenges.
Look at any accomplished company or entrepreneur, creator, or whatever. It's like read their biography.
Mm-hmm.
Crap went wrong. Everything went sideways.
Yeah. Well, I had a colleague when I was working on a PhD, one of a fellow student tell me, "Hey Nate, I want to talk to you about this business I want to launch." That I would go to my relative that's been really successful, but I can't because he knocked it out of the park first shot, and so that's not typical. So I can't. There's no real relation. Like, hey, what am I going to do when this, and this goes wrong? Because it didn't happen. Now that's an anomaly. Because most of us are going to face okay, wow, I thought I had enough money. Mm-hmm. I thought I had enough, common sense, right? I thought I had these resources. And when you don't, and life happens, what do I do? What do I do? And this is something that it's very close to you because you just went through all this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's break some of that down as you can. This evolution, if you will, in your own journey, because you've faced tremendous obstacles. You've overcome them. Mm-hmm. You continue to overcome them. You were at a pretty good high when you got some. Let's rewind for just a few minutes and give some background, some context of where you were, say, a year to 18 months ago.
Yeah. So if the listeners don't remember my story, basically I'm a filmmaker. I had, talked about in previous episodes how 3 years ago I was driving for Uber, writing a script in the evenings. And I, was pitching it out after I wrote this script to, Tom Cruise's producer, to the writer of Jurassic World, and the basic story of the TV show that I wrote was a bunch of video game players 30 years from now go from virtual reality to this new technology called neural reality, where it's like the Matrix. It's in your mind. And they start to play the games, but as they start to play, it's like lifelike. It's fully realistic. Everything feels real in there. But they start to have these intense trauma moments. There's glitches in the game. And so the PTSD they experience in the game follows with them when they come back to real life. And this experience was born out of my writing partner who was working in a mental health hospital. And I, we were playing Fortnite during the day. So
nice.
You put them together, it goes through in the TV series. And it's a really, really fun series that explores mental health and the future of gaming and entertainment and how real is too real. And so, as I've shared in previous episodes, we had this crazy journey of, like I said, going from Uber to pitching out to producers. You were with me, Nate, in different masterminds where I'm like, this isn't working out. I'm going to go start real estate park, or like RV park kind of side quests that I was doing. And then everything came to a head during 2021 with the metaverse hype, when everyone was just throwing crazy amounts of money around. And I was like, why don't I think outside the box? with this. And so I went down to this big Web3 conference in Miami. Some billionaire dude on stage was like, hey, we just made $1 billion this year in 12 months on a gaming thing in Web3. We're looking to get into films next. I said, I like ran backstage, couldn't find him, find out he's at this exclusive party. I go there, it's like James Bond mansion, gates are too tall, armed guards at the door, can't go in. So I like try and climb the wall, it's too high, try and sneak in the service entrance, James Bond style. They kick me out. And
This is for real, by the way.
No, it's 100% real.
This is not. Yeah.
This is sadly the
really
lengths you have to go through to get made in Hollywood. And it's like all this stuff. So I sit down on the curb and I call my wife and I was like, I'm just gonna come home. Like I'm 20 grand in credit card debt, like I'm got to go back to driving for Uber. My car is like just got in an accident. I can barely make it back home. And she's like, don't give up. But you can come back home if you really feel like you need to. So I say a quick prayer. Like, God, if this is going to happen, just let me know. And all of a sudden I stand up and this red Lamborghini pulls up and he's like, hey, my name's Mario. Like, how do I get in the party? I got, an invite. My girlfriend bailed on me, like just trying to get in. I was like, yeah, well, it's around the corner to the right. And he's like, well, just hop in. And, I was like, okay. So I hop in his car. I go around the side. We use the 2 tickets to get in, and I make eye contact with this guy from Gala Games. He's like, dude, nice car. I was like, thanks. And he's like, what do you do? And I was like, I wrote a film about the future of entertainment, and I think it'd be perfect for your platform. And he's like, let's do it. I don't know. So yeah, the long story short, a couple meetings later, they funded our project, and now it's 4 episodes of a TV series called Ghost of Ruin, and that was in like early 2022, and then it was like basically 6 to 9 months of development, and then at the start of last year, 2023, we began production on the 4 episodes. And maybe that's where we can start this now that the preface.
Yeah. Then that's where we pick up the story, because after that, everything was super smooth and easy and no hiccups. And it's been just like lollipops and gumdrops the whole way.
Well, it kind of felt that way for 2023. Michael and Katie, my 2 partners, were saying that like, the worst thing that can happen to you and me, my writing partner, is like for your first project to be successful. They're like, in Hollywood, you grind for 10, 20 years as a, PA, and then you're a grip, and then a lighting assistant, and then like all these positions. And then once you've lost your soul, but like 1%, you get your shot. And then like maybe you come back to life or something. But like,
what did you think when you heard that?
I was like, it's like, I just got the juice, I got the energy. And then, crazy shit happened in 2024. And I realize now, like, oh no, yeah, this is the normal process, is everything's always on fire. Everything's always going wrong. And there's a phrase that like I like and I hate at the same time, that has been like a bit of a mantra, for better or worse. And it's, nobody's coming to save you. Mm. And it's a weird feeling, especially as like a believer and stuff. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's the whole story of like the the hurricane and like the helicopter coming and all that kind of stuff, that basically like you have to be the one to take massive action to get out of your problems. There's not going to be a silver bullet. Here's another good quote. There's no silver bullets in life. There's just lead bullets. There's no one magic solution. There's just you spraying and praying. And then one of them will work out, and one of them will work out if you do enough volume. It's like luck. The luck is surface area of like massive hard work.
Sure. Yeah. So, and this has got to be something that some people, even I would say, maybe even many people, think, well, you know what? I can do it differently. I can do it better. I can change the system or the way things go, and maybe it happens from time to time, but for the majority of us, this is the pathway. I mean, this is the pathway to who we become. And I think it's less sometimes about the business itself. As the object. Really, the object is how we become new and refined, how we become worthy, really. Because I think in some ways, we start out, we're not really worthy. I mean, we're just, we're novice, and there's this period uh, of adversity, of uh, you know affliction, that tests our meter, but it helps us to reframe the 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 why.
Mm-hmm.
This is, why are, what, and because sometimes it's like, oh, and I'd love to hear, your why, how it evolved through the earlier stages of this, because you and I have had conversations about, hey, you know what, wouldn't it be so cool just to like have a winery, and
That's right. Yeah, it's weird. It's like there's a lot of like bucket list whys that I think especially when times are easy, it's easy to say like, well, I'm chasing like legacy wealth for my kids, or I'm chasing this idyllic sort of post sale retirement, pseudo retirement, like open up a winery in Oregon or in Italy or whatever. And like, I think there's merit to that in the sense of like, it's easy to chase a fantasy, but I think a lot of times what I've learned is when I was in the crucible and the lowest of my lows, my why was like, eat tomorrow. That was it. It wasn't noble.
Survive.
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't some great calling. It wasn't even like, to be honest, like, empower storytellers and help them create, an ecosystem where they can bet it, like all the pseudo BS stuff that we say on our corporate websites and stuff like that. Like, there are certain seasons where your why is just like survive.
Right. Let's talk about that. I want to hear. I want to hear about that season and the lowest of lows. Like, if you can take yourself back there.
Well, do you mind if we first cover like 2023 and then we'll dig into
to get there? Yeah. Let's.
Yeah, because I feel like you got to get both sides of like the hills and the valleys.
Mm-hmm.
So 2023 was like a legendary year. Began animation in the start of the year, and we hired awesome animation studio showrunner that wrote all these shows for Cartoon Network, Marvel, DC. This guy done it all. It was awesome. And then we hired huge actors like Natalie Emmanuel from Game of Thrones, Rosario Dawson from Star Wars, Tony Revolori from Marvel, Justin Long from Dodgeball, Galaxy Quest, all these amazing. And then Hans Zimmer's team did our music. So just awesome.
All out. First shot, all out. I mean,
yeah. It's crazy because even the Hans Zimmer thing was like, the team's like, well, we can get this composer and this guy, and they're pitching me people who are like, they've done kid shows before. Like, I was like, I want the big dog. Like, why can't? And they're like, you can't just call up Hans Zimmer. I was like, let me like, basically got through to him and his assistant, and they were like, you can't afford Hans, but you can afford the two composers he mentors at Bleeding Fingers Music, and Hans works with them, and all this stuff. It was awesome. So got to explore his studio and see like the tops that they spun in Inception and like the skulls from Pirates of the Caribbean. His studio looks like this 16th century Gothic vampire lives there. It's so cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So
this is a high. I mean, clearly you're like, this is like mic drop type stuff.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it was just awesome. And, everything with the company we had a, financial relationship with to bring this to life, and the streaming platform that we were working with, it was just, we were pitching them on like, well, we'll have like Disney has their Star Wars, Disney has their Marvel, like we'll have our own like comic books, we'll have our own novel, we'll have our own video games, like all under this banner. And basically everything was just like up and up and up and up. And then it peaked to some degree when we were at Comic-Con. So San Diego Comic-Con is pretty much the biggest nerd event in the world. Six like, I don't know how many tens of thousands of people like attend the event, but just one hall alone can seat over 6,000 people. Wow. And because of the actor strikes and writer strikes, all the big films had to pull out like a week or two ahead of time. So we were supposed to have some small room because essentially we're a nobody show with like not a big Hollywood studio backing us. And all of a sudden our PR agent, who's a legend, is like, "Hey, how do you like to follow Star Trek?" And you're pretty much like the kickoff event of Hall H, like the biggest room, 6,000 people. So the room was full because of Star Trek, because they had some weird workaround with like the animation and writer strikes. And then it's us afterwards. And we're like, okay. So I'm like walking out on stage, never having like, God, like never having literally worked on a TV show in my whole life. And now it's like everyone hears the Uber story with the driver and they're like, this is one of us. Like I was like, guys, I'm a nerd. I was driving for Uber three years ago. And we showed our cast and we showed the Hans Zimmer's team with the composers, and like we have a huge K-pop star in our show, and like all the questions were like, hi Alexa, I just wanted to say hi. Like pass the mic on. It was like 16 like just young girls just all like fawning over our K-pop star for the questions. It was awesome. So, basically just all the press, Variety, like Hollywood Reporter, like, kept getting amazing press. And and then the film platform pushed back their launch date. It was supposed to be, last fall. And then they were, it's like, okay, now it's winter, now it's in January, now it's gonna be summer, and now, oh, spoiler alert, to some degree, like our show launched a couple weeks ago, and it's August, basically a year later from when we launched. All of the momentum that we had built up, just and all of the like, oh, we can do this, you guys can fund us for more. It's not just 4 episodes; it's actually the whole season, and you can do the comics, and you can do the novel, and you can do the video games. All just kind of lost all of that. And so the rock and the hard place of, this journey is really the end of 2023. It's December. Our lease is up on our home, so we have to move. Our dog gets diagnosed with cancer, and it's like mouth cancer that when we looked up the photos of what they told us to remove it surgically, it was like, I love dogs so much. I don't even want people to imagine like the horrific stuff that the post-op surgery photos. So it basically looked like we potentially had to put our dog down, and he's been our child for 8 years. We don't have kids. And then yeah, we find out we have to move all the way, like we have to move somewhere else, which we were thinking about moving cross country then to just kind of be closer to the show, raise more money and that stuff. And then I find out that yeah, we've got to raise more money for the show. Like we weren't going to get funding from our investors. Our show wasn't going to launch, so I've got to raise like a lot more money to kind of just keep the train moving. I remember a night in December where like all these people were calling me, and like some were potential investors, but some are like this, like, like this is a shady loan sharky guy. Like this business loan looks like, this is not it, and like all these different, we were like, I'm trying to raise more money, but I don't know what's the right play. And I just remember sitting on my couch and just like crying and just realizing that like things don't always work out according to how you plan them. And sometimes everything falls apart. And you can work like heck to rebuild it. And sometimes you can do everything in your power and things still fall apart. And you don't know what'll happen. So even, what's the saying? Like, if you're going through hell, just keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So that felt like, we're about to move across country. Our dog, we didn't know if he was going to make it. And my show just seemed like it was like up in flames, up in fire, like everything was falling apart. So that was the worst moment for sure.
How'd you feel?
You saw some of it because we had a retreat in January, and there's a lot of highs to it where like I got to show everybody some clips from the show, and it just looks so cool. And there was also just, that's when I was really understanding the levels of like problems I had to overcome in order to like get us out of this mess. And yeah, I think I've always struggled with the imposter syndrome of like not feeling like I've earned what I have. I had a YouTube channel that I launched with my dad. We grew it to like 1 million subscribers in 6 months. Technically, we went from 0 to 500,000 subscribers in 1 week because of like a video going viral, and then we capitalized it and we partnered with like one of the biggest YouTube creators in the world, and he took pity on us, gave us a shout out, and like boom, 500K. And then we rode the wave to 1 million. And so I felt like that wasn't earned. And then even with our show, even though I did insane stuff to get it made and get it financed, it still was that like, well, this is your first thing, you got lucky. And that's been the voice that's in my head for years, is you're kind of a, like, I fear that someone's like, dude, you're not a real creator, you're not a real entrepreneur, you're in cosplay and you're just good at sales sometimes, and you get occasionally lucky. That keeps me up at night. Like, am I really built for this? Yeah.
But you are built. You're built. You've been building. No, I don't know if anybody like starts out built.
Nobody starts off, even Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Honestly, everyone's like, I don't like the word fake it till you make it, but it's this step outside your comfort zone, step outside your ability zone, and cast vision for who you know you will become. If people partner with you, if people invest in you, if people come to work for you, if people buy from you, that's the reality you're casting before then.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can have some of the raw ingredients, like I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, and, he had, he wasn't, nobody, I mean, you can have naturally a physique to get there, but people start out, you started out slender, right? And
Yep.
People start out with a build, and then they have to start doing the work, right? They have to start putting the work in. And that's what Arnold talked about. He put in more work. Same thing with Michael Jordan.
Insane, because there's photos of him at like 16. He looks like he's like 35 and he's just 240 or whatever.
For sure, right? Yeah. So
he was 14 and he was a twig. And then he was saying he worked out in gyms so cold in like 4 a.m. before school that his hands would stick to the bar.
Yeah. So I think being built for it, certainly there's physiology and depending on the type of work. Well, just in the, let's call it the entrepreneur space.
Yeah.
I think being built for it means, do I have the resilience? Because resilience is the key ingredient to to working through the challenges. Because you can make an argument and say, oh, well, it takes a certain level of cognition. But you know what? There's a lot of people who are really successful that their cognition isn't anywhere near, let's say, others, right?
Right.
You can say, well, don't I need luck? And it's like, okay, well, let's call it, the conversion of context. Yes, you do need that, but that doesn't mean that if you don't have that you can't overcome the obstacles. It just means you need more time.
That's right. Or more reps. Like the best phone salesmen are not the luckiest.
Mm-hmm.
It just did, 20 times the volume.
The law of large numbers, right? I have a buddy when we go out to the clubs way back in the day, talk to every single girl, right? He's like, you know what? Eventually someone is going to say yes.
Yeah, a good sales technique that people say is like, I know my conversion numbers are like 9%, 5%. And they're like, I love hearing no's, because out of 100 calls, I know 4 of them will convert, and I'm just getting closer to that yes.
That's an important distinction, because what you just described is perception being matched with reality. And when you can match perception with reality and set the expectation based on real data, and that was data right there, right? It's like, okay, you know what? Out of 100, it'll be 4. All right. Because if my perception is out of 100, there'll be 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 80, then I'm gonna be like, okay, well, what the heck's going wrong? Well, nothing's going wrong. Your parameters were set incorrectly.
That's right.
So we've got to change the data set so that we can better approach it with a sense of mastery rather than misery.
Yep.
And so it's crucial. So in your journey, in my journey, and all of our journeys, we need to take a step back and say, okay, it's I can't remember the exact quote in Lord of the Rings, but Gimli says, a likelihood of failure, death, et cetera, right? Let's go, right? So it's like that's the right approach, because your likelihood of success is it's slim to knock it out of the park the first shot or the second shot or the third shot.
Yep.
So knowing that, you know what, we're gonna have some hiccups. This might not even work.
Yep. The best framework that I've seen in or tackling impossible challenges is got by Alex Ramosi. And he says, use the framework. What would make it unreasonable? Like, what steps could I take? What actions could I take that would make it unreasonable for me not to make this goal? Even if it's a crazy goal, just ask yourself, like, okay, I got to raise, $5 million. What would make it unreasonable that I wouldn't hit $5 million in raising? Well, if I emailed 1,000 leads per day for potential investors, 1,000, and then if I took, whatever, like 30 calls a week, 10 calls a week, whatever like that, over the course of 3 months, that's like, and then if I convert on like just 5% of them, like, it's actually not that crazy. So like, if you can think in that parameter of like, how would this be? Why would it, what action, what like superhuman massive action can I take that actually wouldn't make this that crazy for me to accomplish that? Then you frame it that way. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that creates the playing field and the bar that
right.
now you have the margin, right? You have the margin now to know that, and I love the way Elon Musk puts it, unless it's catastrophic, we're still in the game.
That's right. Failure's not viral. Because the irony is that his rocket explosions for the first 4 launches or whatever were essentially catastrophic.
Yeah. But he wasn't dead.
He wasn't dead. Until we can clone, like upload your consciousness to the cloud. I'm sure Elon will do that before he dies.
However, that's like, we chuckle about it. And that's really the true meter, I believe, of someone who is driven and determined to get back up. I'm not dead. That means it's not catastrophic. That means there's still hope. There's still possibility. And maybe it's in a different way. Maybe it's in a different vertical. Maybe something else has to change. I had to, when I was new in business, I went 3 years, my first 3 years of getting further and further and further in debt till I had to close one of my locations. I had a couple locations. I had to close. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm a failure. I'm a close, because I set the wrong expectation.
That's right. It wasn't that you open multiple locations. Because what's the batting average is like 1 in 3 is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. 33%. You're an A player.
That's right.
And my uncle, I went to my uncle. I'm like, man, I'm just not working. He's like, you got to close one of your locations. I'm like, man, I feel like if I do that, then I'm failing. But what happened was when I did, it released a burden.
Yeah.
And I could focus better because that was my dot one. I was 21 years old.
That's right. So that's something I think worth exploring is the mental drain and actually how much it limit. Like when you're in scarcity mode, and this is what I was for most of this year, I had very little capacity for the dreaming mode and the vision casting mode and the discovery mode of new possibilities. Because so much of my time and mental effort was basically work to solve all the fires that are about to kill me today, start to work on the fires that could kill me tomorrow, and then cope from the stress of all of this. So like marriage was really rough in segments of this year, personal life, no vision. But if there was a world in which we had just been more strategic last year in asking ourselves the question, even though everything looks like it's like on the up and up and everything's going well, what if it doesn't? How can we plan for that eventually? And I think if there were cost cutting measures and ways in which we had more foresight that things weren't going to work out, I would have had a lot more traction this year with some of these new things I'm working on, because I just wouldn't have had this like cash crunch, have to raise money or we die, scarcity, grasping. And now I have, over the last month or so, I've had more just space because we figured a number of things out. To basically now I'm overflowing with ideas, and I'm back to actually really my genius zone of who PJ is, which is a visionary, kind of like this idea guy who asks what if and then raises money around it. Like that is, and sadly, there, they call in business the opportunity cost of a lot of things that you didn't do because you were doing something else, right? So a lot of times we can focus on good things, miss out on the great things. And I think a large part of this year, and that's the problem with not asking yourself when things are going right, like you're not in a wartime mode of like things can always go wrong in a moment's notice. It's made me a better leader to where there's no world in which in any startup or company that I run in the future, I'm not going to have like try and allocate the 12 months of runway, 18 months of runway, all that kind of stuff.
And massive confidence.
Yeah.
Because look, man, you've overcome massive adversity, right? I mean, most people will not even know what that feels like to through some of the things that you went through in terms of, the pressure and really having to come through for those who you made a commitment to, the responsibility of it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I can't talk about a lot of the specifics of like raising this year and what we had to go through and all that kind of stuff. But there was so many moments in which I felt like basically like if we didn't do a certain thing, then everything falls apart. Like for real, everything falls apart. And I constantly was just like, I can't make it through this next step. And then honestly, like some nights you just believe it. And that's it. And it's like the grief cycle. Like you can't force false positivity and act like, like that is going to save you. It's not. It's not.
But here's what we can learn. When we talk about opportunity costs, we say, oh, well, if I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, I would have been able to do this, and this, because then now I have an opportunity cost because I lost the opportunity because of what I was going through. So now I've got a cost. But that's not always the case, because sometimes the opportunity cost was not going through the trial, not going through the tragedy, not going through the fire that refined you.
Preach.
That is the opportunity that you had, which came at a great cost.
Hey,
become a new person.
That one makes the fridge, Nate. That was an aha moment for me. Because what I was repeating a minute ago is basically like I missed out on a lot this year. What you're saying is actually it'll pay dividends because you learned the lesson.
Yeah. That's right. All the stuff you missed out on is not even going to pale in comparison to what it's worth to have experienced what you have experienced. Because in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, when you're facing some adversity, you're like, psh.
Because to be honest, like everything's levels. I remember 3 years ago when I was writing it and I had 20 grand in credit card debt and I thought that was the end of the world. And now I would love 20 grand in credit card debt.
I'm gonna tell you.
I'd be
that's like a month, right?
But then you think of like, and then as a company, you're like, oh, we're this in debt or something like that. We need to raise this, and I guarantee you, the problems of tomorrow will make these look so pale to where I'd be praying for these problems because my problems are bigger. But then you unlock your ability to be the solver of those bigger and bigger and bigger problems. And I think as in life, as you scale, the problems you have inherently in your business, as it scales, it compounds and it multiplies. So if you can't figure out how to balance your books with $1 million a year budget, you're screwed if you have $10 million a year in revenue. And I know that I will become a person who creates, $100 million company. And it's not out of a desire, like I'm not happy until that rested. Like it just comes from a place of like, I like the game. I like what a man can be, he must be. Like I'm just on that path for like creatively exploring the convergence between entrepreneurship and creation and creativity and that stuff. So yeah, I want to learn these lessons now with like small table stakes, which are still millions of dollars. But yeah, I need to learn them now. Yeah.
Well, I'm with you every step of the way on that journey, and it's super exciting uh, to be a part of that, to share
Yeah.
that with our with our listener who finds great value in knowing that they're not alone.
Yeah.
They're not alone in this journey of struggle and triumph. At the same time, they can benefit. Someone can benefit from hearing the transparent reality that yeah, it's tough. At the same time, it's rewarding.
That's right. That's right. It's rewarding because you learn who you are. And necessity is always the mother of invention. And we naturally cling to all the comforts. And it's like, what are the comforts? The enemy of progress. You say it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And as humans, I think the problem that I have with like the 9 to 5 kind of job is that it tells us like if we can make a 5% increase in our salary each year or whatever, like we're growing in life. And it's kind of, but I think most jobs in the modern workplace, like we're not growing each year in a meaningful extent compared to what we could be if we jump off the deep end and
No doubt.
entrepreneurship. Oh my
No
God,
doubt.
I'm a completely different person, and in some ways you do accumulate scars, and I think I wrestle with being more jaded, more cynical, all those aspects of it, but at the same time there's a lot of false realities, false beliefs about ourselves that we think we are because we've never been tested on those things. Yeah.
That's a good place to hang our hat and continue
Keep
the
going.
conversation right around being tested.
Yeah.
And I look at life often as, each experience is a test. And sometimes I pass the test, sometimes I don't. But guess what I get to do? I get to study more and take it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And expand your time horizon on what the pass, the fail pass ratio and what success is. And your vision's always changing for what your goals are. And I think that's a good thing. It's not like the person who endlessly pivots or lowers the bar. Yeah.
No, yeah, because vision is fluid.
That's right.
Yeah,
Vision's
we are
fluid.
as humans.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just glad you got to have me on today and share because I'm still in the middle of my story, and each season has its ups and downs, and it's kind of like it's like the seasons of the year, right?
Yeah.
There's the spring and the summer and fall and stuff. So
Well, I'm looking forward to the next season.
yeah, likewise, man. It's been good to share the journey with you and to be mentored by you and coached by you. So thank you so much for all your impact. I could not have made it through this year without you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, brother. It's good having you.
All right.